Today we're going to be installing a trick flow aluminum differential cover. We're going to put this on the 79 mount to try to strengthen the rear differential a little bit. The idea behind this differential cover is a combination not only an aluminum cover, but it's also called a differential girdle, where this strip that runs across the back here is going to help put some pressure on the bearing caps, help support the bearing caps when they're under a lot of load. Since this car has a bigger than stock engine, and I plan on taking this to a drag show, I'm going to try to make sure that the stock differential is as strong as it can be. The 7.5 or 7 5/8 differential that was in these cars wasn't one of the stronger ones that GM made. So this is hopefully going to strengthen it a little bit. I checked the kit out a little bit. It seems pretty good so far. It comes with a gasket. It also comes with a hardware pack that has the bolts that are going to push on the bearing caps, as well as longer bolts that go through the cover and into the differential. It did say in the instructions there's different types of thread patterns that were used in these differentials in different years. So one of the first things we're going to do is verify that these bolts will fit my differential before I take everything else apart. So but first things first, get the car jacked up so I can fit underneath it and start taking things apart.
Okay, so under here is our differential. I can wiggle myself in here. We'll see if I have the right size bolt. I do. So the first thing I'm going to do is pull out one of these bolts, and I'm going to compare it to one of the bolts that came in the kit and see if they have the same thread pattern. So I'll hook up my air gun here. Make sure, nope, this one. I'm gonna run one of these out. I think I'll run one of the top ones just to make sure I don't get a leak just yet, because if this isn't the right one, I need to put this back together until I do get the right set. Fortunately, it's empty right now. So I'll grab one of the new ones, which I did not bring with me. And what we're going to do is we're going to put them next to each other. I'm going to look at two different things. There's a lot of things that can vary in thread pattern, but what I'm going to look at to see if this is going to work, at least initially, I'm going to make sure the size looks similar if you hold them up next to each other end to end. And I'm also going to put the two thread patterns together and make sure that they fit. If you find that there's a gap, if they're uneven like this or like this, that's a pretty good sign that they're not the same. If they fit together well like this, that's a pretty good sign that they probably are the same pattern and the new one's going to work. So now that I've done that, I'll thread it into the hole. Threads in nice and easily, no problems. So these are the right bolts, which means I can continue with my installation. You never want to force a bolt into a hole, because if you mess up the threads, then you have an even bigger job on your hands. So I'm going to run the rest of these out, drain the fluid. I'll pull the old one off. We can get ready to install the new one. Okay, so I've run out all of the differential bolts except for the one at the very top. I don't know if you can see that or not, but it's one on the top. Couple things. First of all, number one, using an air ratchet. Some people would probably say not to do this. I would never run bolts like this in using an air ratchet, but for taking them out quickly, if you're careful, make sure you're going in the reverse direction, it works well. Two, I wish I had safety glasses right now. Nothing else other than rust falling down. This is not my garage I typically work in. This is my garage, but I have another one I can use that I have a lot of my tools and do not have my safety glasses here. But I wish I did. The last thing is when you're taking out bolts any kind of oil paste like this, it's always a good idea to leave one in place and have your pan ready. The reason being, most of the time, like this one, this thing's still perfectly sealed up there. It's not leaking at all, even though all the bolts are out and the one that's still in there is loose, not holding it tight at all. The seal holds it there 90-95% of the time. Every once in a while, though, you get one that just spontaneously pops off, and if you're not ready for it, you have a giant mess everywhere. So I have the pan ready, I have a bolt on the top so the whole cover can't fall off at once. What I'm going to do now is take just a flathead screwdriver and carefully pry the cover until it starts to run out the bottom a little bit. So it'll start to drain into the pan. You can see the fluid, at least I hope you guys can see. The fluid is a nice golden color. This differential has very few miles on it since I rebuilt it. I'll put up another video that talks more about this car if you're interested specifically, but I've worked on this differential a couple times. I put different gears in it. I switched from a 273 set to a 373 set of gears. I put new bearings in it. I put a limited slip differential in it. It's an Eaton True Track differential now. And I'm getting oil all over my screwdriver. And I also upgraded the axle with a new they're Mosier axle, the 28 spline instead of the 26 spline. So I've already done some work to make this differential beefier than it was before. And so the oil has been changed. Everything's been cleaned recently. I'm just switching to the cover because I didn't have that when I had done the rebuild. And so actually, this is kind of like a break-in oil change for this differential because it probably has a couple hundred miles on it. That's about it. Okay, I'll take the cover off, and I don't have a rag with me to keep it from dripping, but on the cover here, I have two magnets in this differential. Typically there's one magnet that collects just little fine medical shavings, particles, dust really, that comes off of the gears and the bearings in the differential. If you take this apart and you have a huge amount of that dust build up, that's not good. That probably means that there's something wrong with your differential. I've taken some of these apart where this looks like a little porcupine in there, the little magnetic lines and everything arranged into little spikes. So if yours looks like that, you may need more serious work to your differential. But just a little bit of dust like this, especially on a brand new gear set that's just been broken in, or if the differential's never been serviced before, this is pretty normal looking. So I'll take this off. We'll clean the gear set out, clean all the old silicone off of the housing because that's what sealed this cover on. Then we'll be ready to install the new cover with the gasket this time. So we're not going to use the silicone. So I'll get that taken care of, and then I'll be back with you. Okay, so you saw me scrape off all the old gasket. I just took a regular old t-shirt rag, wiped everything off. I don't have an ideal scraping tool here. I'm just using a knife blade. I'll move out of the way. Take it off. The silicone cleans off pretty easily what was left after I scraped it. Scrubbed off pretty easily with the rag. It's not a bad idea to cover your gear set while you're doing that so that you don't get silicone pieces down into your differential. Couple of things just to point out while we're in here. This is the ring gear. This is the gear that's attached to the differential and the axles. It rotates with the wheels. The pinion gear contacts the ring gear on the front side back past the differential. This is the differential itself. This is what allows you to turn the wheels to rotate at different speeds. As I mentioned, this one is a limited slip so that under power it locks these together more so that you can get traction and power to both wheels. These are the bearing caps here and here. You probably can't see the driver's side one. Those are what we're going to support with the girdle part of the new differential. One of the things I'm going to do, this was suggested in the directions that came with the kit, and I always do anytime I change on a differential. There's a little bit of a lip here, so down inside is a puddle of oil. You'll be able to see my fingernails covered in oil. So oil, the old oil, and particles can accumulate in there. Not a bad idea just to reach in there with an old rag or a cloth and wipe out the old oil, as well as if there's any dirt or metal filings from the gears and the bearings that's accumulated in there. That will help get rid of all that as well. So I'm going to do that just to make sure it's as cleaned out as possible. Not a bad idea to change your differential oil every 30 to 50,000 miles or so. It's typically what manufacturers recommend for a severe duty application. I like to do it whether I use it severely or not. Granted, I do a lot of severe use. I mean, with this car, with the bigger motor, or with my pickup towing stuff. But I find it's not a bad idea just to follow that severe duty schedule. Cheap insurance that your car, your parts are going to last as long as possible. I like working on cars, but once I've done the work, I want to try to make it last as long as I possibly can. While I was in here, I also just looked around a little bit at the gears themselves. Stuff, made sure everything looked okay. Checked out my wear pattern. This has been a good, quiet running gear set so far, so I'm hoping to get good long life out of this one, even with the more severe duty use. The GM 7.5 or 7 5/8 differential was one of the smallest ones GM built. It's very similar to the 8.5 and the 8 3/4. I'm not sure exactly what they were that were in many different cars, most of the half-ton trucks, etc. Almost the exact same design. Just this one's a little bit smaller. Very common. These weren't known for being strong, but hopefully with the proper reinforcements, from what I've read, they can be pretty good. So I'm going to put that to the test. A couple things we're going to do with the new differential cover here. As I mentioned, this one has two main benefits. One, it's shiny. No, the third benefit. One, it's aluminum. It's finned here for better heat transfer, get the heat out of the oil and out to the air better. Two, it has this girdle on it, which will help support those main bearing caps. So the first thing I'm going to do is a little bit of assembly. I'm going to take the studs that are going to support the bearings. Once the cover's on, they're going to come in like this and push in. And I hope that little swiveling foot there will land and support that evenly. I hope. We'll see how it works. One of the things the kit recommends is to pre-lubricate these a little bit so they turn smoothly in the case. I'm simply going to utilize just a little bit of the oil here that we drained out. If your differential oil was really cruddy, I would not. I would use new oil, but this was pretty clean. I feel pretty comfortable using it. And then these have to thread in from the inside because they have this foot on them. There's no way they can come in from the outside, so you got to make sure these go in before the cover is installed. If you're simply changing your oil or resealing your cover, this can really be a very easy process. Just pop the cover off. You do obviously have to clean the silicone off of your cover. Also, just like I cleaned it off the differential, so that you have a good clean surface there. You want to make sure you clean the magnets well so that they can continue to collect more metal shavings and stuff when they're in there. I don't know if one of the drain plug in this is magnetic to collect stuff. I hope that it is. I would like to have some kind of magnet in there. I guess I can test that out a little bit before I put it together. But if it's not, I may have to add a magnet. So check that out. One of the other common modifications for these cars, rather than strengthening the 7.5 bolt, which if you're really planning on going nuts drag racing, if you're switching to a super crazy small block or going to a big block with any kind of power to it or anything like that, you're going to run power adders, etc. You probably want to either go to a bigger GM differential, swap in one of the 8.5 or 8 3/4 differentials, or go to an even bigger 12 bolt GM differential, or they make retrofit Ford 9-inch whole axle kits that can go in these as well. And I consider going that route, but there's significantly more money, and this is working class dog garage, so money doesn't grow on trees. So I've been building this for myself. Plus, it's good experience. The whole idea is to be out here working on stuff. So it's been fun. I've been working on it too. Now that I have my studs in, okay, I'm ready to put the cover on. I need to get my gasket like this. Gasket going to go between the cover and the differential. I'm going to hedge my bets just a little bit. I'm going to apply just a little bit of silicone to the gasket just to help make sure I get a super leak plate seal. It's one of the little tricks I found. The paper gaskets, sometimes these things work just fine. Sometimes they tend to get a little bit of seepage where oil just kind of leaks through them a little bit. So a little bit of silicone sealer on either side will just help make sure that it's a super tight seal. So I'm going to put a little bit of that on each side and then get the cover mounted up on the differential. Okay, I'm back again. Got all the sealer put on. It was one of those jobs that went a little faster in my head than it did in reality, but I got it all back on there and sealed up, and I think it will pay off in the long run. Got the cover up on. I put all the bolts in. And just started them a little bit, made sure everything was centered, everything fit. Then I just turned them down to hand tight so everything is together there. One of the things I forgot to mention, if you're converting to this kit, make sure there's nothing around here that's going to interfere with the girdle, even especially as your axle travels up and down, and with the suspension travel, there's nothing up here it's going to bump into. This car does not have a rear sway bar, or anything on it that would be in the way, although somebody would like to add one. The other thing I was going to mention, if you're servicing your differential, you're not putting on a cover that has a fill port and a drain port, make sure you can get your fill plug out before you take your cover off, so you know you can get fluid back in it when you're all done. The fill is on the passenger side, right in front of the axle up here. It just takes a regular square extension or 3/8 drive extension you can put in there, and that will take the plug out for it, as long as it's not too tight. Now that it's on, Trick Flow wants these torqued down to 10 foot-pounds, I believe. Before I do that, I'm just going to snug them, make sure that everything is seated right. If you're doing the Trick Flow kit, these are 16 points. You have to make sure you have a 16 point socket. Okay, so since the last time, I realized I did not have the correct size 16 point socket. Disadvantages of not working in your usual garage. So I've gotten the right size socket. Otherwise we're back where we were. I also have my torque wrench set up according to the instructions. The case bolts get torqued to 25 foot-pounds, and the studs get torqued to 10. So I'm just going to work in a crisscross pattern and torque down each of the case bolts to 25 foot-pounds. Okay, so I went around, I torqued all the bolts to 25 foot-pounds. I did find that I did the crisscross pattern, then I went around once, and I went around a second time because I was finding they were still moving a little bit before the wrench would click. So I did 2 loops around just to make sure everything was fully down to 25. Now that those are tight, the next step is to tighten the bearing support studs. And Trick Flow recommends putting a little bit of Permatex on the lock nuts that lock down on these. I'm going to put just a little bit on the threads as well, also on my finger, just to help seal the threads some, to make sure we get a good seal and no seepage. So a little bit in the threads there and there. Once that's done, I already have my torque wrench set to 10 foot-pounds now, which is what Trick Flow recommends for the studs. I do have to switch it over to the correct implement here. And we're going to go ahead, we'll turn these in until they touch, and we'll just go until it clicks. Okay, so 10 foot-pounds isn't a whole heck of a lot, just a little bit of pressure in on the bearing cap. You don't want to overdo it because that can lead to uneven pressure on your bearings, and that's not going to help your cause at all. So okay, so just to the click again. I have to forgive my tool, it falls apart here. And then once that's tight, put the lock nuts on. Make sure there isn't a flat side on those. So once they're on, I gotta get a wrench to tighten those. But overall, the installation has gone very well. I've been very pleased with it. I did notice I was checking out the drain plug, and the drain plug is magnetic. It will stick to steel, so that will collect particles out of the oil once I put it in. And then the drain plug or the fill plug will go in here. I was hoping maybe the fill plug was up on top so I could put a funnel in and just dump oil in, but it's right here, so I'll have to get a hose and feed the oil in that way. But overall, I've been very pleased with the kit. It's been a good installation, so I hope it's been helpful for anyone that is looking to do the same.